The sun rises over the Nile, and the moment it does, an entire civilization holds its breath. Not because of a battle, not because of an invasion, but because of you. You are the reason the sun rises. You are the reason the Nile floods its banks every year and feeds the crops that feed millions of people. You are not just a king. You are not just a ruler. You are a god walking the earth. At least, that is what everyone around you believes. And in ancient Egypt, belief was everything. It was more powerful than any army, more unbreakable than any stone wall. But here's the thing nobody tells you about being a pharaoh. You did not just walk into that throne. There was a world behind the golden mask, a structure, a system, a set of roles that each person in Egypt's royal hierarchy had to play perfectly, or everything fell apart. This is your life, as every rank in the world of the Egyptian Pharaoh. Rank 1, the royal child, born into the palace. You did not choose to be born into the royal family of ancient Egypt. Nobody does. But from the moment you arrived in this world, everything about your life was different from every other child in Egypt. The palace was your entire world. Massive stone corridors lined with paintings of gods and battles, servants appearing before you even knew what you needed, food prepared by dedicated cooks, teachers arriving every single morning before the sun was fully up. And what did those teachers teach you? Everything. Reading and writing in hieroglyphs, not because it was beautiful, but because every royal decree, every religious text, every communication between Egypt and foreign kingdoms was written in this script, and you needed to understand all of it. Mathematics, because managing the largest construction projects in human history required precise calculation. Astronomy, because the Egyptian calendar, the flooding of the Nile, the timing of religious festivals, all of it depended on reading the stars correctly. You also learned to fight, even if you would never need to swing a sword yourself. A pharaoh who could not ride a chariot, who could not draw a bow, was a pharaoh who could not command the respect of his generals. So you trained, every morning, the body alongside the mind. But the most important lesson you received as a royal child was not written in any scroll. It was the way people looked at you. From the very beginning, every person in that palace treated you differently. Servants lowered their eyes as you passed. Priests bowed their heads. Even other adults spoke to you with a deference that felt strange before you were old enough to understand why. They were not just respecting a child. They were already treating you as something between human and divine. And slowly, quietly, you began to believe it too. Rank 2, the crown prince, heir to the double crown. At some point, it becomes official. You are the chosen heir, the next pharaoh, the person who will one day wear the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt and hold together the most powerful civilization on earth. And suddenly, everything intensifies. Your education expands. You now sit in state meetings, not to speak, but to watch, to learn how the senior advisors debate, how the vizier, Egypt's most powerful administrator, presents information to your father, how decisions about grain storage, foreign trade, military campaigns, and religious ceremonies all connected to each other in ways you had never seen before. You also begin to appear publicly beside the pharaoh, at religious ceremonies in the great temples, at military parades, at the festivals that the common people of Egypt looked forward to all year. Every appearance was carefully choreographed. You stood at a precise position, you wore specific clothing, you held specific objects that each carried symbolic meaning understood by every Egyptian watching. Because in Egypt, appearance was not vanity, appearance was communication. The way the crown prince stood, what he wore, which hand held which staff, all of it sent messages to the entire population about the stability and divinity of the royal family. This is also when the weight of expectation really landed on you. Egypt had existed for thousands of years by the time you were born. The pharaoh system had survived floods, droughts, invasions, and internal rebellions. It endured not because of any individual ruler, but because every generation understood their role in a chain that stretched back to the beginning of time itself. You were not just going to be the next king. You were going to be the next link in that chain. No pressure, just the entire weight of civilization resting on your shoulders. The day comes. Your predecessor, your father, your uncle, whoever held the throne before you, is gone. And now, in a ceremony that has been performed in almost exactly the same way for thousands of years, the double crown is placed on your head, and your entire identity changes. You have a new name now, not the name your parents gave you, a throne name, a Horus name, a golden name, 5 names in total, each representing a different aspect of your divine authority. Your human self and your godly self have officially merged into one being. Your life as Pharaoh is nothing like most people imagine. You do not sit on a throne eating grapes and giving orders all day. Your schedule is relentless. Every morning begins with religious rituals because as the living representative of the gods on earth, you are personally responsible for maintaining Ma'at. This was the ancient Egyptian concept of order, balance, and harmony in the universe. If Ma'at was maintained, the Nile flooded on schedule, crops grew, the sun moved correctly across the sky. If Ma'at broke down, chaos, what the Egyptians called Isfet, threatened to consume everything. The pressure of this was not symbolic, it was completely literal to every person in Egypt. The pharaoh was the cosmic glue holding the universe together. Beyond the religious duties, your days were filled with administrative meetings. The vizier brought reports from every part of Egypt, how much grain was stored, which provinces were struggling with drought, disputes between powerful noble families that needed royal judgment. Military commanders presented intelligence about what was happening on Egypt's borders. Foreign ambassadors arrived with gifts and proposals that needed careful diplomatic responses. And then there were the building projects. The Egyptians did not build pyramids because they were afraid of death. They built them because they were absolutely certain what came after it. The preparation for your afterlife as pharaoh began while you were still very much alive, often within the first years of your reign, because the scale of what needed to be built, the tomb, the treasures, the religious texts that would guide your soul, the provisions for your eternal existence, required decades of work. When you died, you did not simply stop being pharaoh. You became Osiris, the god of the dead and the afterlife. Your son or successor became Horus, the living god, while you became the eternal god of what lay beyond. The transfer of divine identity from one pharaoh to the next was not just a political transition, it was a cosmic event. The death of one god and the birth of another. The burial process was extraordinary. Mummification preserved your physical body because the Egyptians believed your soul needed to return to it. The process took 70 days. Every organ except the heart was removed and placed in canopic jars. Your body was wrapped in hundreds of meters of linen. Amulets were placed throughout the wrapping, each one providing protection for a specific part of your journey through the underworld. Your tomb was filled with everything you would need for eternity: food, clothing, furniture, weapons, board games, boats, servants represented in small figurines called shabtis, who would work on your behalf in the afterlife so you would never have to labor yourself. And then the tomb was sealed, and your name was carved everywhere, on every wall, every statue, every monument you had ever built, because in ancient Egypt, the name was everything. As long as someone spoke your name, you lived. As long as your image existed, you were present. The physical world and the spiritual world were never separate. They were 2 layers of the same reality. Some pharaohs are still with us because of this. Tutankhamun was a minor king who died young and whose tomb was almost forgotten. But his name survived, his image survived, and 3,000 years later the entire world knows his name. He is still alive, in exactly the way ancient Egypt intended, from a royal child in a palace corridor to an eternal god carved into stone forever. That was your life in the world of the Egyptian pharaoh. And here's what I keep coming back to when I think about ancient Egypt. 3,000 years. That is how long this civilization lasted. 3,000 years of pharaohs, pyramids, and Nile floods. By comparison, the Roman Empire lasted around 500 years. The United States of America is less than 250 years old. Ancient Egypt lasted 12 times longer than America has existed so far.
And the reason it worked, the real reason, was not the pyramids, it was not the armies, it wasn't even the Nile. It was the idea that order was sacred, that the person at the top of the hierarchy was personally responsible for the harmony of the entire universe, that every person in Egypt, from the lowest farmer to the highest priest, had a role to play in maintaining that harmony. When people believed that completely, everything else followed. Which rank would you have been in this world? The royal child discovering what you were born into? The crown prince feeling the weight of everything that was coming? Or the pharaoh standing in front of your own monuments knowing that thousands of years from now people would still be talking about you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Next, we're heading to feudal Japan for the samurai, a civilization built on a completely different kind of order, one where honor was worth more than life itself. Subscribe now because that video is coming very soon.